Hello, everybody. My name's Susan Anderson. I'm the Regional General Manager for Uber in Australia, New Zealand, and North Asia. It's wonderful to be here today at the 2019 Elevate Summit and to have the privilege of announcing the third international pilot for Uber Air. But before I do, I want to tell you a bit about the process that we went through when we were deciding on the third pilot city. As a growing global business, it was really important that the third city was outside the US. So in addition to Dallas, Fort Worth, and Los Angeles, we wanted to look at other great cities from across Europe, South America, Asia, and the Pacific to form a shortlist of exciting options. Since the shortlist cities were announced in 2018, Uber's regional offices and the Uber Air team have had numerous meetings with government officials, industry stakeholders, and aviation regulators from across the different cities. We were looking for a place that has forward-looking regulatory regimes, environments that support innovation, and where a product like Uber Air can have positive impact, improving how people live and work in their cities. And finally, a place like us that is excited about future mobility and that will be with us in this for the long term. So, it's my privilege to be able to announce that the third city, which will test fly Uber Air from 2020, is a city where there's great coffee on every corner. It's a city where a horse race stops the nation, a sporting capital, a cultural epicenter, and consistently voted one of the most livable cities in the world. Of course, I'm talking about Melbourne, Australia. Woo! How good is Melbourne? So, why Australia? Well, let me tell you a bit about Uber's operations and history in Australia, and why we think it's a great market for Uber Air. Since Uber entered Australia in 2012, Australians have embraced the service. We now operate in 37 cities and towns across Australia, and have more than 60,000 driver partners. This reflects the demand from the community for a better way to get around, as well as from people looking for flexible earning opportunities. Around 3.8 million Australians regularly use Uber as a reliable way to get from A to B, and governments across the country have recognized ride-sharing as an important part of the transport mix. But it's not just the rideshare business that Australians have embraced. Uber Eats has had an amazing journey in Australia over the last 3 years. We've grown from our original 100 restaurants in, of course, Melbourne being the first city, to more than 20,000 restaurant partners in 24 cities across Australia and New Zealand. From a brand that didn't exist 3 years ago, Now there is brand awareness at 95% of the Australian population. That's the same as McDonald's. Really extraordinary. And we know Australians will respond just as positively when we launch Jump e-bikes and e-scooters later this year. Partnering with governments in Australia has been core to what we've been working on. We partner across significant parts of the Uber story in Australia, delivering innovative partnerships and solutions, such as on-demand public transport and mobility as a service trials, such as a Ferry Connect trial and late-night journeys to and from the public transport network. And just last month, we announced one of our most innovative government partnerships, a partnership with Tourism and Events Queensland for an on-demand submarine ride through the Great Barrier Reef. That's our scuba product. So what is it about Australians that make us so receptive to innovation and to Uber? Australia's a big country, around the same landmass as the US, and is highly urbanized, with over 2/3 of the population living in a small number of capital cities. And Australia is one of the fastest growing countries in the OECD. In the next 30 years, the population will grow from 25 million to 35 million people, with over 80% of that growth happening in those 5 capital cities. And so, with such large land mass, small populations, Australian cities grew out, not up. And like many American cities, they became dependent on private cars for transport. Even today, only 35% of homes in Sydney and Melbourne are within 400 meters of public transport. The private car remains the dominant form of transport, and in major cities, congestion's a growing problem. It's estimated it's costing Australia around $16.5 billion a year in lost productivity. But it's not just costs. That is, missed bedtimes and actual human time that's spent sat in traffic. And so, Australian cities need transport alternatives that are faster, easier, and cheaper than owning your own car. And governments in Australia are ready for this. They are thinking about innovative ways to solve those problems, in addition to that already impressive investment in existing infrastructure and public transport networks. So Melbourne will be the first city within the Australian market, but we see other cities such as Sydney following soon after. So why Melbourne? I'm going to start by showing you a bit about how people get around the city today. What you can see here is Melbourne broken down over a 24-hour period. We divide the city into 1-kilometer tiles. Red means people are moving into that tile. Blue means they're moving out. And the height of the tile represents the number of trips going to or from that tile. And with this data, we can build intuition about travel patterns in the city. We can identify hotspots in the city that experience the most traffic. These are represented here by the yellow zones, and they show where the traffic can be the worst. We then use these hotspots to serve as a guide to identify possible locations where nodes in the Uber Air network might be. And whilst we would initially start with 2 nodes, as you build them out, you could see the potential of how Uber Air could change the way a city like Melbourne moves. And of course, this is just the beginning of the conversation with communities, governments, and customers as we together start thinking about site selection and where skyports will best fit in individual cities. So what could this mean for the everyday person living in Melbourne and commuting on key routes? Well, firstly, Melbourne Airport to the city. It's 19 kilometers, but given traffic conditions, the time to do that journey can vary from 25 minutes to 55 minutes. In an Uber Air, that journey goes down to 5 minutes, 9 minutes, end to end. Or another great example, Geelong, a city fast growing just south of Melbourne. It's 75 kilometers from the city, and from Melbourne city centre, people commute in weekly or daily, and it can take up to 2 hours. With Uber Air, this would be 14 minutes by air and 18 minutes end to end. So Australia's approach to regulation at every level has been an important part of this decision. Australia was one of the first countries to embrace Uber and regulate ride-sharing. We've had so many positive and forward-looking conversations with Air Services Australia, the Civil Aviation Safety Authority, and the City of Melbourne, all of whom have been extremely progressive in their approach to the future of urban aviation. The Victorian Government has been an extraordinary partner as we've worked together on this project for the past year. The Memorandum of Understanding that Uber and the Victorian Government are entering into today is a testament to this important partnership and the government's approach to the future. This support has been critical to our decision. And in addition to governments and regulators, Australia's business community has been enormously supportive of Uber Air. We have partnerships in place with leading Australian companies to support this launch. We're very excited to announce that Telstra, Australia's leading telecommunications company, as our preferred network infrastructure partner for Uber Air. Our respective teams will now work together to assess what network infrastructure, connectivity requirements, and other capabilities would be needed to support airspace mobility in urban centres. And in addition, we're pleased to announce Centre Group, who own and operate Westfield centres across Australia, as our preferred infrastructure partner as we identify, develop, and co-locate Uber Air Skyport. And we also partner with Macquarie Capital's Green Infrastructure Fund, a division of Australia's largest multinational bank, Macquarie, focused on Skyport infrastructure and electrification in Australia and the US. And lastly, Uber Air will continue to work closely with Melbourne Airport, who are here today, and the gateway to Melbourne for tens of millions of travellers each year, and with whom we can see strong potential as the first node and Skyport for Uber Air in Australia. This positive environment keeps Australia at the forefront of transport innovation. A future urban aviation network, as we know, we've talked about today, is not something we can build overnight. This announcement today marks the next step in our conversation with Melbourne and Australia about making this vision a reality. Thank you, and please join me in welcoming the Minister representing the Victorian Government, the Honourable Robin Scott, in order to give some words.
Please welcome the Honourable Robin Scott, Minister, Government of Victoria, Australia.
Oh, no mic. Sorry. Sorry? Okay, it's on. Okay, I'll start again. G'day, DC. What an incredibly exciting occasion. It's a great pleasure to be here from Australia on behalf of the Victorian Government. I'm delighted that my home city, Melbourne, has been selected to join Dallas and Los Angeles as the first trial cities for Uber Air. We are so very proud. Thank you. If you have never visited Melbourne before, please do. It's just a 10-minute ride, Uber ride, of course, to Reagan Airport, but then a 20-hour flight. Australia is a long way from much of the rest of the world, and Melbourne is right down in the bottom corner. We're a very large country, roughly the same size as the United States, but with less than 10% of the population. As you could imagine, that means there's a lot of space in between everything. A lot of space between businesses, a lot of space between people, and a lot of space between the services that businesses and people need. Historically, this has presented a number of challenges. Whether you're operating a business that needs to move goods across the country, or you're a government that needs to deliver services across a broad area, overcoming the tyranny of distance has always been tricky. It's a challenge that I'm proud to say the Victorian government has taken up with enthusiasm. There is an unprecedented amount of infrastructure being planned, funded and delivered. Everywhere you turn in Victoria, there's a transport project underway. In this context, the opportunity to be at the next frontier of transport technology, it's not just exciting, it's absolutely necessary. Victoria has always embraced technology. Melbourne is undoubtedly the #1 tech city in Australia, and I'll repeat that. Melbourne is undoubtedly the #1 tech city in Australia. Thousands of cutting-edge companies have chosen to make Melbourne their Australian home, including Square, Slack, Zendesk, Eventbrite, Splunk, Stripe. They come because Melburnians embrace the potential of technology to improve people's lives. We're home of Australia's top universities and R&D centres. Now again, I'll make that emphasis, the home of the top universities and R&D centres. We have an incredibly talented tech workforce engaged in changing the world. We welcome new ideas and creative thinking to meet future demands. Our economy is very strong. We've had a 27-year period of continuous growth. That's right, 27 years of continuous growth. But the best thing about Melbourne is that we're not just about technology. We're not just about producing bright, young, innovative thinkers. We're not just about building the economy. Melbourne is a cosmopolitan, culturally diverse city. We embrace our people and celebrate their diversity. The Economist awarded us most livable city in the world for 7 years running. Global companies with offices in Melbourne run 24/7. Our time zone means our day starts before most of the world wakes up. Right now it's already Wednesday morning. From the Victorian government's perspective, the Uber Air partnership announced today is a natural fit. It is an opportunity to keep our state at the leading edge of innovation. Well-planned, forward-looking transport systems have always been an enabler of growth and prosperity. We see the potential of Uber Air to become an integral part of our region's transport system. We look forward to continuing our relationship with Uber and its manufacturing partners. We will help nurture and grow this new industry, which could revolutionise commuter travel. We are here, we are ready, and we cannot wait to make this happen. I would now like to introduce Greg Corman, Senior Managing Director and Global Head of Energy Technology at Macquarie Group. Thank you very much.
Please welcome Greg Coleman, Senior Managing Director, Macquarie Capital.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. That is really a close-up there, isn't it? It's a request to zoom out next time. Thank you kindly to everyone. Thank you to Eric and team for having us here. It really is a privilege for me to be here today representing Macquarie Capital in the Green Investment Group. We're excited. I think it's fair to say we're super excited about working with the Elevate team and its partners on the development and electrification of this infrastructure. I'd like to. Oh, good. That's better. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Macquarie and our team, and then share the 3 reasons why we're most excited about this partnership. First of all, how many Australians in the room? They're here? Gotcha. Okay. How many folks from Melbourne? Yeah. How many from Sydney? How did that happen? Yeah, well, you can probably discern at this point from my accent that I am not from Australia. I have spent a lot of time in Australia. I spent enough time in Australia to know the unique opportunities and challenges both in energy and in transportation. I've also spent enough time in both Sydney and Melbourne to know that if you're after the very best coffee in Australia, you'll find it in Melbourne. And is that true? It's probably true, right? That might be one of the reasons for the choice. I don't know. The folks from Australia certainly know a bit about Macquarie. Macquarie is the largest owner and operator of infrastructure on the planet. I think right now we're currently at about $391.2 billion of infrastructure under management. We also happen to be the #1 financial advisor to infrastructure projects globally and the #1 financial advisor to public-private partnerships globally. Recently, Macquarie Capital has doubled down on green and sustainability. We acquired the UK's Green Investment Bank in 2017. We've rebranded that the Green Investment Group. We've taken those sustainability and green impact metrics, and we use them not only in the UK and in Europe, but wherever we go. That is an asset development and project development shop focused on energy and sustainability. We have something like 90 projects globally now around 12 countries, many of them landmark projects, such as Taiwan's first offshore wind farm. Interestingly, lately in the news as well, we structured the financing around the only behind-the-meter energy storage portfolio that uses non-recourse project debt, which, if you're into project financial, know is an interesting step forward. Maybe a bit about our team and how that leads to why we're so excited about this. So I lead a global team. That team is based in San Francisco with a significant presence in Australia. That team is exclusively focused on new energy and mobility technology. We focus on developing the infrastructure that those technologies require. We also invest in technology companies that ultimately enhance the value of those assets. That's really all we do. And so that dedication of focus inside a group like Macquarie, I think, is unique. Probably relevant to let folks know that I'm not a banker. I've been with Macquarie for about a year now. I was previously with Tesla. At Tesla, I had 2 jobs. I led the development of what has become the world's largest high-powered DC charging network on the planet, the Tesla Supercharger program. Has anybody ever used a Tesla Supercharger? Yeah. My personal phone number is on a forum somewhere, so sometimes when the cable doesn't work, they'll call me now still on my cell phone. Please don't do that. Just call the regular number. I was also responsible for the build-out of our energy storage business. That is, batteries outside of cars, all the way from the big 100-megawatt battery in South Australia. Some folks might have caught that on Twitter. To distributed energy storage systems. This is relevant because oftentimes you want to put energy storage behind the meter where you have very peaky loads like charging stations. I think we built the first battery-backed charging station in California in 2012. So it's not just me. There's a team of people with that sort of DNA focused on this effort inside of the largest infrastructure player on the planet with deep roots in Australia. why are we so excited about this? There are three things that really come together that have us pumped up. One is that if you kind of think about the cost down chart and think about the meaning of what an infrastructure asset is, we have to work. We're excited to work with Elevate and its partners to get access to the lowest cost of capital, so that this can really look like infrastructure. That's super important. And Macquarie just has a long heritage in working with its partners and communities to do this. Starting close to the community, figuring out a way to help them drive down the cost of capital so that you can get access to the safe, reliable infrastructure. So that's really core. The second reason we're super excited is because this is about electrification of transportation. And the electrification is the operative word there. Has anybody ever been responsible for really any part of a vehicle electrification program where you had to worry about utilization rates? Yeah, there's a few people. Was that easy? I don't know. I don't think, if you thought it was really easy, then we invite you to come work more closely with us. It's complicated. We're excited about it because it's complicated. The value inherent in electrifying transportation is about increasing utilization rates. However, if you want to increase the utilization rate of a new technology, that means you're co-optimizing across more and more factors. You're co-optimizing across thermal management of a battery system, across routing optimization schedules, against what the utility tariff looks like, what's happening in the real-time energy market or ancillary markets when you get into the detail. The more you want to increase utilization, the more that complexity comes on board. You're also doing that, as we can tell, in an environment where it's a relatively high upfront capital cost that you're dealing with both the vehicle and the charging infrastructure relative to other conveyances. There is emerging a new technology and shifting regulations and standards. That's not easy. That's super complicated. We've built a team that's dedicated to working on that problem. We see a tremendous amount of complementarity in the intellectual capital and DNA between our teams and the Uber Elevate team and its other partners, and we're really excited about that collaboration and partnership. Third, and I think this is really important as well, this is about green. This is about making this sustainable. We're really keen to make sure that the electrons that go into the Uber Air conveyances, the EV tolls, the air taxis, that those electrons are as green as possible. We ourselves are a developer of renewable energy projects. We have a trading desk that can firm and shape renewable energy. We're happy to work with other developers that develop projects that can deliver renewable energy. That's a key focus for us as well, because what you can, at scale, the really wild thing that you can start to envision here is that you have a network of skyports where they can actually serve as a balancing mechanism for the grid, a renewable generation falling mechanism for the grid, actually enable more renewable energy to come onto the grid, actually help balance the grid with dynamic charging or bidirectional use in off hours. And what that could do, and it has done in South Australia, is reduce the cost of power for everybody, for businesses and homes on that grid. That's pretty wild to think that a skyport in your state could lower the cost of power for everyone. So that's how we're approaching this. That's why we're so excited. It's about infrastructure, low cost of capital. It's about solving the complexity of electrification and pumping up utilization, and about making sure that those electrons are not only green, but maybe going even further and turning these into real assets on the grid. I think there's more to talk about. There's a panel tomorrow. Really looking forward to everybody's questions. Close by saying that we're super keen to work with Uber Elevate, the state of Victoria, Center Group, Telstra, and all the other partners. And also really excited to be here and thankful for this group of folks, and look forward to talking with everyone in the room. With that, it is my great privilege to introduce a video message from the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Michael McCormack.
Well, as a kid I used to watch the Jetsons on TV, and I used to marvel at how these little gyro aeroplanes used to fly around the sky. Well, the past is now the future. The future is now here, and Uber Air is launching in Australia. This is exciting. This is technology for today, but for the future. So good luck with Uber Air. Good luck to what they're trying to achieve, because it is the future. It's going to be a brave new world we are now venturing in, and I acknowledge and I encourage and I recognise the great establishment of this Uber Air initiative and wish it every success in the future.